The Be Quiet Pure Base 500 DX, which by the way stands for Deluxe, is the better and upgraded version of the regular Be Quiet Pure Base 500, a case which has already established itself into the market thanks to the build quality and features. The Pure Base 500 DX is available in two colors, black or white, and has a price of around $100 or euros, and this is for both colors. This case is meant to improve on the original Pure Base 500 while also being sort of affordable. The main purpose of the DX version is to offer much better performance in terms of cooling and noise operation. First, let's see what is delivered with this case. We have a user manual which contains all the specifications and the description of each feature of the case, then a motherboard standoff key for installing or removing them, an assortment of black metallic screws, and finally 6 zip ties for cable management, all of them packaged in a cardboard box found inside the hard drive cage. The main side panel is made from tempered glass, which also features a black tint. The method of installing the panel is the classic 4 metallic thumb screws, one at each corner of the glass, with rubber pads placed on the chassis to hold the panel in place and also prevent any scratches from happening. It is not the best system in the world, but it works for this case because the side panel is not excessively large and thus not that heavy. The opposite side panel, which covers all the cables of the system, is made from the same metal as the rest of the case. It uses a notch system for the installation and 2 captive thumb screws at the back for holding the panel in place. It is again not the best system in the world, but it works for this case. Also, if you are wondering why there is not made from tempered glass, well, usually when you wire manage the computer, some cables might stick out and you may be able to force them down using a metal side panel and not a glass one. The biggest improvement that is brought with the 500DX over the older Pure Base 500 is the front panel, which is not only completely different, but in my opinion looks a hell of a lot better. There is mesh on around 80% of the front panel, with the center being the RGB focus of the case. Also, the front RGB elements are connected to the rest of the system using a touch pin system. What does this do is basically removes the cables, and thus you can remove the front panel without the fear of breaking off some small wire. This system is pretty simple. On the chassis side, you have a pad placed on the PCB with contact points, while the front panel RGB strip has the pins that will make the contact with the previously mentioned pad. The front panel is attached to the case with the classic plastic clips, which you have to push out from inside the case. While this is not really that good, let me show you what is good. The front panel is removable, but thankfully it is not attached to the front I/O panel, which means one important thing, that when your system is fully assembled and the cables are wired neatly, you can remove the front panel without disturbing anything. And why would you want to remove the front panel, you might ask? Because behind it we have a full dust filter covering the entire length and width of the front of the case. This dust filter is attached on one side with some tabs that allow it to swivel like a door, while the other side is held in place by magnets. Behind the dust filter you get to see one of the 3 included 140mm fans. All 3 fans are Be Quiet Silent Wings 2 units, and the other 2 fans are placed at the back of the case, one on the top and one at the rear, both installed as exhaust fans as they should be. Unfortunately, for some reason, all these fans are using 3-pin connectors. Back at the front of the case, you have space for either 2 140mm fans or 3 120mm fans. The I/O panel is almost the same as the regular Pure Base 500. The differences consist in the replacement of a single USB 3.0 port with a single USB Type-C connector, the integration of a separate button for cycling through the LED's lighting modes, and that's pretty much it for the new stuff. There are also the usual audio jacks, one microphone and one headphone, and a large power button, plus a rather nice chromed Be Quiet logo applied below the I/O panel that completes the whole design of the front of the case. The top of the case is simple and features a magnetic dust filter that is very easy to remove and install. The actual top of the case has plenty of cutouts done in a triangular pattern to allow for the air to be moved in and out of the case with ease. There are also the standard elongated strips for installing both fans and radiators at the top of your system. In addition, On this side of the case, you can install either two 140mm fans or two 120mm fans. The last dust filter is found on the underside of the case, and just like the one at the front, it is massive, and thankfully it can be removed from the front of the case. The filter is held in place by metallic tabs, and the removal process is as simple as basically just sliding the filter out at the front. The case sits on 4 plastic feet that raise it above the ground for quite a bit. These feet are using rubber pads to grip on the surface they sit on and also to prevent any unwanted scratches from appearing. At the back of the case there isn't much going on, apart from a rather nice metallic cover that protects the expansion slot screw side. There are also thumb screws used for everything on this side of the case, and I will get into that more as we install a system into the case. Inside the case there is business as usual. First of all, there is a power supply shroud that is also perforated at the top, so it does two things right, hiding the power supply used and also allowing the air to be moved around between the shroud and the rest of the system. At the back there are plenty of tie-down points available, and I mean plenty, a thing which apparently is too hard to accomplish for some other manufacturers, because as we know, having RGB is more important than having wire management or good looking cables. Speaking of wires, the case cables are already pre-routed and held in place by high quality Velcro straps, and all these cables and wires are all black, so they will blend nicely with the rest of the system. The space for wire management is plentiful, measuring approximately 24mm. That's plenty of space for any cables you may want to have routed at the back. Behind the motherboard tray and right above the cutout for accessing the backplate, there are two SSD trays installed. These are held in place by two metal notches and a single metallic thumb screw. In addition to these two behind the motherboard tray, there are also two more SSD trays installed at the front of the case. Unfortunately, these are a bit tricky as they are attached to a plate that covers the wire management cutout for the motherboard. So once everything is up and running, moving that tray may become difficult thanks to the large 24-pin cable. In front of the power supply and under the power supply shroud, there is a small hard drive cage installed. This is removable and you only need to remove two thumb screws found above it. This cage has rubber pads applied on both sides to dampen any vibration caused by the spinning of the hard drives. Installing the system is pretty straightforward, however there are some interesting things to note. First of all, there is the power supply installation. To fit the power supply, a bracket needs to be removed from the case, then the power supply inserted halfway, and afterwards attaching the bracket to the back of the power supply and again pushing the whole assembly inside the chassis and installing the 4 thumb screws holding everything in place. With the system installed and up and running, we get to see that the PureBase 500DX has plenty of space to offer for any modern gaming system, both around the graphics card and especially in front of it. There is also plenty of space to route the I/O panel cables on the underside of the motherboard, and the installation of the CPU power cables is a breeze. That orange tint you see, that's from the integrated LEDs, which by default will start in dark orange, which is a rather fitting color for the case and for Be Quiet as a brand. The RGB LED strip is placed on the upper left corner of the chassis, right behind the edge of the case. Both this LED strip and the front LEDs are working in tandem and are fully addressable RGB enabled. You can cycle through the lighting modes by using the button found at the front of the case within the I/O panel, or just connect the LEDs to your motherboard and have the whole system synchronized. The Be Quiet PureBase 500DX is a very good case. First of all, the mesh at the front allows for good airflow to get inside to the components, and what is even better is the included fans and their placement and configuration. It is rare these days that cases have good fans, let alone 3 140mm fans that are placed with thermals in mind. From the factory, this case is ready to go, and the only thing left for you to do is to install your system in it. The layout of the case is also very good, with plenty of SSD trays available and also plenty of tie-down points for wire management. The power supply shroud has perforations at the top to allow the airflow to move freely inside the system. The Be Quiet PureBase 500DX is silent, thanks to not only the included fans but also to the front mesh, which allows for a lower RPM to be used in order to get the same airflow. With the included fans spinning at their maximum rated speeds, the total noise output was 33 decibels, measured at a distance of 10 centimeters away from the system. The only thing that remains is to decide if the $100 price tag is right for you. In my opinion, this case is very good, even though the price is higher than I would have liked. Another note on this case is that this is the very first product to have RGB that Be Quiet as a brand has released to the public, which is interesting. Also, the RGB is done in a rather subtle way and has two modes of operation as I've said earlier. Either you use the button at the front or you connect the LEDs to the motherboard and have the software control everything for you. This is one example of RGB integration done absolutely right, as it is not in your face all the time and actually complements the case and the system installed inside. If you liked this review, then perhaps you can consider subscribing for more, and also if you want to support the channel directly, then in the description below they are linked both the Patreon and subscriber star pages of this channel.